If you want to be a combat accurate shooter, be a target shooter first. As I researched combat accuracy, I found it to be a subjective definition, and that subjective definition most frequently sounded like any accuracy which significantly impairs or impedes the threat's ability to cause us harm. The problem with this definition is it's unmeasurable, and there's no way to know if you're being combat accurate outside of the combat. You could be a bad shooter or simply shoot bad and still be combat accurate because the bad guy decides to give up the fight, or you could be a very good shooter who places a very good shot, but for some reason your particular bad guy is motivated and decides to stay in the fight and kills you anyways. As I delved into this phenomenon of combat accuracy, I learned that almost any shot was acceptable, while some instructors were willing to accept an 8-inch grouping at 5 yards. Still others were willing to accept smaller groupings, say 5 to 6 inches, at the same distance. I was left a bit bemused at these standards, and I actually began to wonder if some students weren't being defrauded. I noted some disdain was shown towards target shooters and target shooting skills by those who defend combat accuracy. For those who understand fundamentals, we recognize that shooting a 5-inch group at 5 yards really isn't accuracy at all. And frankly, it was kind of depressing to observe that some students were willing to accept that practically no shooting skill or marksmanship fundamentals were required to survive a gunfight. Please consider that a shot through the heart is a really good place to put a bullet if you want to end a threat quickly. The average human heart is the size of the average human's fist. Now, there are some major arteries that come out the top of the heart, and those major arteries run either down the spinal cord or up the spinal cord towards the brain. Speaking of that spinal cord and brain, those are really good places to put shots too. Unfortunately, your spinal cord is only about 1 1/2 inch in diameter, with some bony projections that extend to the side maybe 3.5 inches. The brain's a great place to put a shot, tends to end the fight very quickly. The problem is if you point your gun at someone's face, I promise you they're going to move your face. So the largest and best place to put a bullet is going to become a moving target. All of this means is that the things that you actually do need to hit to almost ensure a quick ending to this gunfight is much smaller than the 8-inch circle. In fact, they're smaller than the 6-inch circle. Combat accuracy defenders are the first to mock target shooters with the saying, "But paper targets don't shoot back." I'll give them credit. They do understand that skills degrade under stress. The problem is that they fail to remember that 1, they're not immune from that degradation of skills, and 2, the target shooter actually starts from a much higher level of skill than they do, and it eclipses that pathetic 8-inch grouping at 5 yards. To be able to hit that 4-inch target at 5 yards under extreme duress means that you should be able to hit a 3-inch or even a 2-inch target at the same distances while standing still on the public firing line. And that starts to sound an awful lot like target shooting. To understand that, let me read you something. A 2-inch group at 5 yards is truly not bullseye shooting. Bullseye shooting is done at much further distances. It's also shot one-handed. The rapid-fire portion of the bullseye match is 5 shots in 10 seconds on an NRA B8 target. The 10 ring of the B8 target is 5 1/2 inches in diameter, which is the same as 2 3/4 inches at 12.5 yards, which is essentially 1 1/3 inches at just under 7 yards. Well, now isn't that interesting? A 2-inch group at 5 yards is a lot like bullseye shooting. Seems like what I'm saying is that if you're planning to survive a critical dynamic incident and you're crafting a structured training regimen, it should account for certain realities. And those realities are attempting to hit a 4-inch or smaller target at 5 yards under stress when your skills are going to degrade. All of this brings me to my final observations. If you're shooting at a target at 7 yards and your front sight is anywhere in the notch of the rear sight and not extremely high or low, you should be able to keep a 4-inch group. That's a 4-inch group at 7 yards, executing the grossest of fundamentals. How does that compare to combat accuracy? And what does it say about the instructor that expects you to accept an 8-inch grouping at 5 yards? More importantly, how much did you spend to not learn to shoot and likely not be ready to survive a gunfight? You ruminate on that. I'm going to go practice. The Deadeye method, where we make better, smarter, safer shooters.
Nice.